Okay, so I want to begin by apologizing to you. I apologize to Devorah, but for the rest of you, I went to a shiva, and shivas are always dramatic, and by the nature of things, that I forgot all about the broadcast, so I have no good excuse. I could have remembered. So I want to offer you, because this was totally my fault. This class is free, so when you figure out how much you're supposed to pay, deduct the cost of this class. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk a little bit about Chanukah, not very much, and then we're going to go back to Geulah, which is very, very, very relevant to Chanukah. Okay, so first a little bit on Chanukah. So the halacha is in terms of the placement of the menorah. Okay, it says the mezuzah should be on the right, and the menorah should be on the left. Did we speak about before? We spoke about Chanukah once. We didn't speak about that, did we? Good. Okay. No. That would have been the worst. Okay. So in the general sense, we favor the right in halacha. You're supposed, when you get dressed, you should put on the right sleeve before the left, for instance. So why is that? So the reason is when Hashem created Adam, the first person, he's B'Tselem Elokim. Now, personhood has three different aspects. We have minds, we have emotions, we have bodies. So that means the body is also B'Tselem Elokim. So when you're talking about favoring the right, that means that that itself means that somehow the right gives us a vision of what Hashem is to some degree. So Hashem, of course, can't be known because he has no limitations, and we only understand things through our descriptions. We spoke about that once, what something's made out of, what its form is, and what it does, and we can't answer any of those questions in terms of Hashem. But he wants us to have a relationship, so he reveals himself to us. So the strongest of his means of self-expression is chesed. That's how anybody, you see Hashem and you're willing to, and you have open eyes, you experience chesed every single second in the world, in yourself. Okay, so the strength of chesed is reflected by being Hashem's arm, so to speak. You use your arm to give forth what you want to happen. Okay, so we have fine motor action and gross motor action, both of which are in the arm. So Hashem's right arm is called chesed, meaning Hashem's way of self-expression that's most powerful, and the words we'll use to describe that is right arm. His right arm, meaning the way he's most expressed, is chesed. So when you set up the menorah, you have the mezuzah on the right and the menorah on the left. Now this is surprising. You could have had them both on the right. The mezuzah is high, the menorah is relatively low. They could both be on the right. Why do you have to have the menorah on the left? Especially since Chanukah is a holiday of Nisan and light and goodness. You would expect that for sure it's the right. So now we have to talk about why, when you get to the highest levels of all, the left is even higher than the right. So when you're talking about the highest levels of all, we're talking about Hashem's infinity and unknowability. He chose to reduce the force of his interactions with us enough for us to have a relationship. So the example that would work, imagine Niagara Falls. Have you been to Niagara Falls? Yes, okay. So here you are at Niagara Falls, and you're with your friend Teresa, who's not too smart, okay? And you're both standing by the security fence. And so it's a hot day, you're like looking, you've never seen anything like Niagara Falls, it's so overwhelmingly powerful. And Teresa, as I said, she's not too sure, says, it's so hot and I'm thirsty. So you say, okay, so there's a restaurant over there. The Chabad have a restaurant. We'll go buy something. So she, instead of listening to, she opens her backpack and she takes out her little waterford cup that she takes with her wherever she goes, jumps over the security fence to get a drink from the falls. Now what's going to happen? No more cup, no more Teresa. It's all gone because of the power of the falls. If you want to drink, You'll get it out of what? The faucet that comes by the sink, and you turn it on. And so the reduction creates accessibility. No reduction, no access. Okay. So therefore, the first step Hashem made when he began the process of determining that there should be creation is committing himself to limiting access so that there's some possibility of kesher. So that trait, the name of that trait is Geulah. Geulah means power, but the strongest kind of power, that was a terrible sentence, the most powerful way of expression is restraint. So that if you could picture somebody who could knock somebody over, okay, that's dependent on there be another person who's there for them to knock over. No one for them to knock over, they're just sort of standing there. Okay, restraint is like, imagine this, a locomotive going someplace. And for some reason, again, Teresa recently risen from the dead. Okay, so she wants to go from this side of the street to that side of the street. She hears the whistle, she sees the train, but she figures he should stop. It's his problem because pedestrians have the right of way. That's the law. Okay, so she's going to be jelly in a minute. That's because the man who's running the locomotive can't stop on a dime. It's not possible. Even if he pushes it into reverse, it doesn't stop immediately. Okay, but Hashem could stop immediately. That means Hashem could create so much restraint that anyone could receive what he wants to give. Okay, so when you talk about the different levels of reality, Domain, Somer, Chai, Medaber, you're talking about different levels of Giloi and different levels of restraint. So obviously in the pyramid I just described, okay, the most relevant part of the pyramid in experiencing Hashem restraints is Adam. People could choose not to see Hashem at all. His restraint is so great. So look at the brachos we say. The brachos are meant to be metaking this problem. Give me any food bracha. Give me an example of any food bracha. No?
Shakol niyeh bidvaro.
Okay, so look at what you're saying. Shakol niyeh bidvaro. Everything comes from his word. That's present tense. Even those, I don't know what Ashkenazim say. You said niyah or niyeh?
I think we also say niyeh.
So I know that there's some nusach that says niyah. So even if you were to put it in past tense, you would just say that the Ma'aseh Bereshis created laws of nature that are still effective today because of his will. So we affirm that Hashem is right here and doing with every morsel that we eat. He makes bread, present tense, come out of the earth. So you think, why didn't he make bread come out? I went to Osherad. No, but you could think a little bit more deeply, as could anyone. Okay, so what does this have to do with Chanukah, you may be wondering? The nace of Chanukah was a nace that was on the left side, not the right side. It's even higher than a nace that happens on the right side. How so? So when you say Al Hanisim, how do the words of Al Hanisim be Al? No? Al what?
Ala Purkan v'ala Gvuras.
The rescue. Porkan means rescue. You can only rescue someone if they are endangered, right? Gvurot, we just described. So the evil that was there, the darkness that was there, which Hashem put, which is the important part of this drasha. This is also from Sfas Emes, by the way. The importance of the darkness is the backdrop for what? For Gvura, to make Hashem's presence in our lives accessible to us. How so? So Chanukah had two aspects, as we know, the war and the Nes Hashemen. The war is something that's remarkable only because winning was impossible. That's why it's important. Okay, it's important because there's no way a family could win the Greeks. Okay, Hashem hid his presence enough that everybody thought this would end in tragedy, but it didn't. So we're actually only seeing the light because it's coming from the left, from the Gevurah. When you look at the miracle of the Shemen, okay, where did they find do you know this? I don't know if you would know this. Where did they find this pach of Shemen? Where was it? It was hidden in the dirt. The Kohen Gadol hid it. Okay, so they had to find it, not only through looking, but through looking in places where they wouldn't expect to find it. Okay, so that's the inyan of why the menorah has to be on the left. So what that means is, since the way Hashem created the world is that he creates darkness so that we can make light, and he can answer the light we make with much more light of his own. Chanukah is the time of that sort of victory. So all of the Shalosh Regalim are about what Hashem did for us. Pesach, he took us out of Mitzrayim, and we recount the Makkos, Kriyas Yam Suf. Okay, Shavuos, he gave us the Torah, right? Sukkos, he protected us in the desert with the Ananei Kavod. But Purim and Chanukah, Hashem is, so to speak, celebrating that we saw through the mask of Gevurot and reached out to him. Purim and Chanukah are about us reaching out to him, not about him reaching down to us. So that aspect of Chanukah is critical in understanding what we're going to be learning next, which is about the Geulah. But do you have any questions on Chanukah before we go to the Geulah part? Okay, so on to Geulah. Let me see where I put my book, right here. Surprising as it is that I found it. Okay, so again, I'm reading to you from Rambam, from Hilchos Malachim, which is the last halacha that he wrote, Mishneh Torah. And if I'm not mistaken, we're up to the 12th perek. So we covered already was a discussion about who Melech Mashiach could be, what his qualifications would be, what the purpose of his coming would be, what the effects on the nations of the world would be. Okay, how belief in his coming is a part of the Torah itself. And I think that might be as far as we got. We may have gotten to this next part, which is what I want to go to, if not as a chiddush by way of review. Nothing changes in nature when Mashiach comes. We spoke about that. Okay, so if you drop the fork, it'll still go down, not up. Okay, so that's because Hashem is not letting go of the Gevurah. We're seeing Hashem in the place of his concealment even after Mashiach comes. So there are different stages. The first stage, we did speak about, so remember we got further than this even. It says that the lion will lie down together with the lamb. So Rambam says this is not literal because that would be unnatural. But the lion in this case, and also the wolf, are words that we use to symbolize the nations of the world. There'll be a peace with us. But the lion will still be a lion, ferocious and hungry and uncaring and vicious. And the wolf will still be a wolf, by its nature tearing things apart, but they won't attack us. So the miracle part is that they don't attack us, but they didn't change. The lion is still the lion, and the wolf is still the wolf. But as Rambam says, they'll dwell with us quietly. They'll do whatever they need to do for their own needs. They basically will have nothing to do with us. Their ferocity will be contained. So an example of that would be, let's say, the relationship we have with Jordan, where there's still Rishayim, but they don't bother us. They're not involved with any sort of war against it, at least not at this moment. Okay, so that's stage one. Okay, now, in terms of, and when will the darkness lift? So it'll only lift when we've seen through it. So I'm going to take you further. Okay, so he talks about the next stage being the war between Gog and Magog. I don't think we spoke about that, did we? No. So in Navi, it talks about there being a war between Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog is not the name of any particular nation. There's no nation whose name is Gog and no nation whose name is Magog. And it's not even clear whether this is a reference to two nations warring against each other, or one nation that's called Gog and Magog warring against the world as a whole. Why are they called Gog and Magog? So the word Gog is rooted in the word Gog, which means a roof. In the laws of Shabbos, one of the laws is that you're not allowed to build a building. Bona. What makes something a building? If you have a roof, it's a building. If you have just sides, it's not a building. So there are nations that see themselves as, so to speak, the roof of the world. The ones who give definition to the rest of the world's culture, military capacity, political reality, the ones who are in charge, the ones who make the world a world on their terms. So in terms of, and who would that be today? So today we certainly see on many, many fronts, a war between Western culture, Western political goals, Western idealism, and Islamic culture, Islamic rules, Islamic idealism. So it's not just a matter of this country and that country. We're talking about a fight for the conscience of the world and control of the world's reality. Okay, so there will be a war like that. What's its purpose? So the purpose is twofold. He doesn't discuss it here, it's discussed elsewhere. One is that the Rishayim should kill each other. Okay, let's like whatever. Those of us who keep up with certain events in Syria, okay, yeah, yes, that's very good. Okay, so there's that. But it's also, we'll see the ferocity of this world, and we'll recognize that our existence is dependent on Hashem, which is part of our tikkun. Okay, so either before the war or after the war, Hashem will send Eliyahu Hanavi, or somebody who could do the role that's going to be Eliyahu Hanavi's role. So let's talk back about Eliyahu Hanavi and why he would be in the picture. So Eliyahu Hanavi lived in the time of Bayit Rishon, and he spent his life basically in the northern kingdom, which was more idolatrous than the southern kingdom. So he was a person who believed in the people. We'd go from place to place teaching, doing miracles, reviving the dead. He believed in our capacity to see light. So one of the things he felt was that if the Jews only had a demonstration of Hashem's caring and presence that can't be denied, they would all do tshuva. Sounds good? Okay, so you know the story. The place where the name of the avodah zarah of his time was Baal, which means master. If those of you who like mythology, in Western mythology, European mythology, it'll always revolve around the mistress of the heavens and the master of the earth. Okay, I said it backwards, the earth goddess and the heavenly master. Okay, that's how it goes in Western mythology. So they believed in Baal, the master. So the seat of their worship was in Haifa. So he said he's going to go to Haifa, to Mount Carmel, and on their turf demonstrate that their belief system is hollow and that the idols they make have no power. Okay, so the priests of the Baal were all there at Har Carmel. That's where they had their monastery or whatever they had at that time. And he said he's going to prove Hashem is there. He did not ask Hashem for permission to do this experiment. So what did he do? He said, we're going to both offer korbanos to our gods, and we'll see whose korban is accepted above. So he told the Baal that they could go first. So they built an altar, and they tried to get a fire to come down from heaven, and no fire came down. Now, for reasons I'll explain in a moment, which will tell you something about why we don't want to see light. The worshippers of Baal wanted very strongly for their belief system to prevail. So a man called Chiel volunteered to go inside the idol. It was a huge idol. He could be inside and start a fire from the inside. And therefore would give the appearance of a fire coming from heaven to consume the offering. And Eliyahu, of course, said he's not going to do anything of the sort. Why do you think now, if Chiel believed in the force of this idol, he wouldn't have to go into its interior to make a pseudo miracle? And if he doesn't believe in it, why would he do this and lose his life in a terrible way? What do you think? Why do people have Mesiras Nefesh for things that they don't believe in?
He must have believed in it. If he did something, he must have believed in something.
So if he believed in it, then fire should come down from heaven and consume the offering without his intervention. Okay, so people believe and don't believe, and we have to discuss the agenda. It will make us understand the Geulah better and also Chanukah. Okay, I'm sure. I don't know if you all drive or don't drive. Let's pretend you all drive. This might be a fulfillment of your fantasy life, like with me. I don't drive, but I dream I do. Okay, so in any case, you ask people who drive, should there be traffic laws? What do they say? Yes or no? Yes. Then you ask the same people, do you always obey the traffic laws? What's the answer? No. So we want and don't want at the same time. So wanting and not wanting, believing and not believing, has to do with an inner conflict. The conflict between what and what, between body and soul. Okay, so the body wants all of its fantasy life to be validated. The soul knows better, but the body wants to do it. They want the kavod, they want the rewards, they want everything. Okay, so one of the reasons that we could be in a nace and not get anything out of it is this conflict, which oftentimes is difficult to resolve. So in any case, Eliyahu prevailed, fire came down from heaven. Everybody said 7 times, all the Jews who had gathered there to see it, they said 7 times, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim, 7 times. If you were Eliyahu, how would you feel? I'd feel marvelous. The experiment worked. And Achav, the king who was there, insisted in those days a way of giving kavod was to run before someone's chariot, to be his runner. So now the king is going to do tshuva and all the people are doing tshuva. And yes, it all worked fine, but it didn't, because in a very short time they reverted to where they were before. Because miracles don't make real changes. Miracles don't make real changes. They get your attention. But real changes have to come from living a life in which there's dvekus, which has to do with your mind and your speech, your emotions, and your body. Okay, so he failed.
Can I ask a question about this?
What?
Can I ask a question about miracles then?
Yeah.
So like Mitzrayim, yes, Mitzrayim was like all miracles.
Right.
And afterwards, like we had to like earn it and type of things like that. So like I know like it says like in times of Mashiach, the miracles are going to be even greater than the times of Mitzrayim. So like what's going to be different that we won't fall after Mitzrayim, after Mashiach miracles like we did after Mitzrayim miracles?
So that's a good question. So the answer is, as we learned already, this time Mashiach will be empowered to get us to do tshuva and to institute the Torah's law. If it was just belief, without that, we would fall again.
I'm excited. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so here you are. Now we understand the limitations of miracles. So what happened to Eliyahu? The Jews reverted, and he said, I've had enough. I've had enough. And he left Eretz Yisrael. He was able to he got all the way towards the Midbar Sinai. He was living in a cave. How he sustained himself there is also a story of miracles, but we'll leave that for now. And Hashem came to him. He asked him a very important question. Malacha Eliyahu, what's with you, Eliyahu? And he spoke about where the Jews are at, which again, if Eliyahu Hanavi was here looking at us, he would have what to say. Eliyahu Hanavi, why are you running away from them? And they don't learn no matter what. They do this, they do that, they do the other. Okay. So Hashem then showed him a miracle. What miracle did he show Eliyahu? He had a great storm happen. Okay, and Hashem tells him, I'm not in the storm. Okay, I'm not in a loud voice. I'm in a still small voice, which is the voice of inner conscience. Okay, so Eliyahu Hanavi, who had shown that he didn't know how to live in this world, went up to heaven, and he's still with us. But he comes back. When does he come back? He comes back under two occasions. One, there are stories about his doing things for the sake of individuals who are worthy, but for all of us, there are two times when he comes back. One is Britot. Hashem made him Malach HaBrit. That's what the Mohel says in the Bris. Why is he called Malach HaBrit? He has to bear testimony that the Jews are not hopeless, that we're still doing Brit Milah, even though we have our downs. But when Mashiach comes, and this is what we're talking here about the Geulah, he has to see that we all are redeemable. He has to give testimony to this, that we're all redeemable. So what will he do? So this is either before or after the war of Gog and Magog. Rambam presents two possibilities. One is before and the other is after. His job is to tell people how they can each person individually, how could they find their place. I want you to hear Rambam's words for a moment. Okay, one moment. Okay. V'amod Navi li'asher Yisrael la'achin libam shene'amar hinei anochi sholech lachem et Eliyahu Hanavi. So the purpose of Eliyahu Hanavi, by coming at that time, is to achieve what he wanted to achieve centuries earlier, to get us to do tshuva by having straight hearts. Ve'enu ba lo letamei hatahor. He's not now to get someone to have a straight heart, to get us to do tshuva. That doesn't happen through telling people they're tamei when they're tahor. Not to tell people who are defiled that everything is wonderful. And not to tell people who have every reason to think that they're Jewish, that they're not. And not to mysteriously make people kosher Jews when they're not. So what? Yes. Ela lasum shalom ba'olam, to make peace in the world. So peace means all of the different facets, all of the different parts of the puzzle come together, with each one doing its own function. So what motivates people more than anything else is the ability to be themselves in the highest sense. So if you go back in your mind, think about something that you do well. Everyone does some things well. If you think about the good feeling of doing something well and seeing it appreciated. So Eliyahu Hanavi is there to bring us to there. We've done tshuva, but you don't know who we are. So you could have two people who are equally righteous, who are living very different lives. So I'm pretty sure I quoted this to you earlier in one of the shiurim or other, where if you look yourselves on the very end of Mesilas Yesharim, open your Mesilas Yesharim, everybody has one. Everybody knows the introduction, and then they sort of like lose it sometimes. But the very end is that Hashem judges people in accordance to their desire to have dvekus in him. So he says explicitly, you could have somebody who's studying Torah all day long, and you could have a person who either works at a job or is self-employed, who don't learn all day long. But if they both do everything they do l'shem shamayim, they're equally considered Ovdei Hashem. He said even a simple person who was working at a very low sort of a job, even that person could be equal to somebody who's on the highest possible level if they're both working l'shem shamayim. But in order to see who you are, where you should be putting your your energies, sometimes you need information. That's what Eliyahu Hanavi is supposed to provide. So to tie things together, so we have Mashiach coming, of discovering who he is. He gets the Jews to do tshuva. There's a war of Gog and Magog. Eliyahu Hanavi enters the scene. Let's see what happens next. Okay, one moment. And then we have the elephant in the room. Before I go further in the text, what's the elephant in the room? He doesn't speak about Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, he tells us why he doesn't speak about him and various other things. He goes on to say that all of the traditions that we have don't include how to mafaresh the Agadata regarding Mashiach, the Agadata that's presented in Shas. The Nevi'im were not given the explanations of what they were seeing by Hashem, and we don't have tradition from Moshe Sinai to know how to interpret these things. So I'm going to digress and tell you from Ramchal about Mashiach ben Yosef, and then we'll go back to this text and understand in greater depth why Rambam suggested we not study these Agadata. So the Ramchal wrote a Mamar called Mamar HaGeulah. So he divides the era of the Geulah into two segments, physical and spiritual. So he calls them Pekita and Zechira. So the function of Rachel's children all along, this has to do with Yosef, for instance. Yosef, what does it say in the text about him? We call him Yosef HaTzadik. What does the text call him? Yosef Hu HaMashpir. Yosef is the one who supplied. He kept his own family alive, did not bear any grudge against them or take any revenge against them, but he also kept the whole world alive. Mitzrayim was the breadbasket of the world. So when you're talking about Yosef, you're talking about someone who'll take the ideals of Am Yisrael and make them accessible physically. So that's one sort of Mashiach. That's Mashiach ben Yosef. What does he have to do? He has to get the Jews to come back to Israel, bring about some sort of a kibbutz galuyot, and get us to want more. So whether Mashiach ben Yosef is a person or an era is a matter of debate, but the mission is not a matter of debate. Back to Eretz Yisrael, kibbutz galuyot, and a revival of willing to feel Jewish. Okay, so that's also part of the reduced version of what Hashem wants. Surely Hashem wants more than that from us, but he'll start with what he can get, so to speak. So that's Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay, then after Mashiach ben Yosef, after we've had this opportunity to concretely try to bring light into the world and goodness into the world, then we get Mashiach ben David, whose job is to, like David did, get the Jews to have a community of people who are scholarly enough and who are real enough to help us become who we could become.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
So if let's say Mashiach ben Yosef is supposed to get us to a place where like it's sort of like we earn it as whatever capacity we're able to. So if let's say like we don't succeed in that, did like the whole human story fail?
So here's what happens. He doesn't discuss this here, but it's discussed elsewhere. So earlier you said that the Messianic era, there'll be great miracles greater than that of Egypt, and indeed that's a puzzle. But when Hashem created the world, he created certain things before he brought the world into being. He says there are 5 things that were created before the world. One of them is Mashiach's name, meaning there's a person, he'll come and he'll cause redemption. So the question is when? Okay, so there are 2 possibilities that are mentioned in Navi. One is at the appointed time, and the other is earlier. Okay, so earlier means if we're ready, which is what we spoke about Mashiach ben David. If we're educable, okay, then it could be earlier. But if not, Hashem will create situations that will make us turn to him. So these situations could be positive or negative. So in the books of Nevi'im, if you look at the Haftorah, for instance, for Sukkot, terrible wars, terrible events, but the result of all of these horrors is that we turn to Hashem from seeing our own inability to have any control over our lives, or conversely, without all of this high negative drama, we turn to Hashem because we want to. And there are many possibilities in between. But the end is that we will be redeemed, even if Hashem has to give us a king as harsh as Haman. Those are the words of Chazal. In the end, there will be Geulah. The question is how it will come. And this is one of the reasons why Rambam says, don't think about it too much. Because knowing all the scenarios don't help you, because everything depends on our madrega. Okay, that makes sense to you?
Actually, it makes sense, but like the thing that it feels like it would be so tragic if we can't get our act together. And I also feel like, even like you had mentioned last class, like the Hashmonaim were like a family, and they didn't think they were going to win over an army, but like they knew what to do. Like, what do we even do? Like, if let's say we're like, okay, we want to be educable, we want to set ourselves up for trying to do this, but like, what do we actually even do? Like, I don't even know what to do. Like, if I was like, okay, that's it, we're going to be Hashmonaim, we're going to make ourselves educable.
It's very tricky. And the reason is that we're in Golas Edom. We're not in Golas Yavin. Golas Edom has the components of all of the Galuyos. We spoke about that last time, did we not? So for some people, so let's look at the Golas. There's worship of power, luxury, the human-oriented world, or the combination. So for some people, the battle is against control and power, with attributing power and control to Hashem. So this could be in the political sense, where that our politicians here in Israel have said the words, they've all, even the ones who are very far left, have used words like Be'ezrat Hashem and Baruch Hashem. This would have been unimaginable 50 years ago. So attributing everything to Hashem politically, attributing everything to Hashem economically, attributing to everything to Hashem emotionally. So for some of us, that's very hard. You have children who are old enough to get married, nobody's banging down your door with shidduch ideas. You want to get your daughter in seminary A, but they'll only accept you in seminary D. Okay, you raised your son to be a little tzaddik, but he seems bent on being a little other than tzaddik, okay? And you have no control. So some people, when they have no control, get angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. And some people turn to Hashem. So one is the Nisayan of Bavel, which is the Nisayan of relinquishing control. So if that's your Nisayan, that's what you should be doing. But if that's not your Nisayan, turn the page. Okay, so the next page is Golas Paras, which had to do with materialism and luxury. So in my seminary, my girls are very good girls. A girl came to me and asked, is there any value whatsoever in buying clothes with brand names? So I told her no, unless it guarantees quality or something, but she said no. So she said, so why do our girls, why do they have to have fanny packs that have, I don't remember the brand anymore, that it says all over the straps the name of the brand? Why do they have to have that? So the answer is that we equate money with quality, and that has to do with our own lives also. So it's not only aesthetic, it is aesthetic, but beyond aesthetic, what money buys is it buys you kavod. Money definitely buys you kavod. Money buys you aesthetic possibilities. Money buys you a certain degree of freedom. Is that true? Okay, so people can end up overly involved in money. So if that's your issue, then deal with it. That's your place in Geulah. There's still other people who are, they relate to life like the Greeks do. They don't think much about Hashem one way or the other. They don't talk about Hashem. He's not in their life. What do they talk about? What they're investing and where they're going on vacation and the interesting book they read. And isn't it marvelous that we have easily access to internet? You just take your phone with you and you're wherever you want to be. That's also there. So if that's your fight, you have to know what to do with it. But people have to figure out their own fights for themselves because we don't have Nevi'im, which the Geulah said is the greatest treasury, the greatest tragedy of the whole exile. That we want to change, but we don't know what direction to take, so we despair of any real change. Now, others will say, beyond what I said, is if you could see the cause of the exile, not what the exile is, but what caused it, what the trigger was, then you could figure out what you have to fix. So since Bayit Sheni was destroyed through Sinas Chinam, apparently we have to go in this direction. So we have all of these possibilities, and Rambam says that we won't know which one to go with. So someone asked Rav Shteiman. Rav Shteiman said, in our times, it's all Ben Adam L'Chavero. The whole thing is Ben Adam L'Chavero. I'm sure that there are other people who have other opinions, but that's what he said b'chol ofen. So everybody knows where they can improve Ben Adam L'Chavero. So I'll give you one
It's
example.
not like a Hashmonai thing where like it's like, okay, we're having this like movement, like it's everyone just in their own heart has to, quietly work on developing ourselves into more kind, compassionate, loving people.
Yeah, or unless they're in a place where they have real choices to make. So I'll give you two opposite ends of the scale. Okay, so yeah, I always end up going to political things, which I know I shouldn't do. But as some of you know, the people who are called up to Milubim, many of them are on their third round. Okay, so it means they've been away from their families and they've been away from their businesses, and that's what it is. So for somebody there, the Ben Adam L'Chavero may be being able to go to a yeshiva or to turn on the daf and say, but this is where Yeshua comes from, rather than being embittered and angry about people who don't serve. So there's a Daf Yomi shir online, maybe your husband's look at it, or if yourself, if you have any of your big sons. It's run by somebody called Stefanski, Eli Stefanski. And it's very light, it's very entertaining. It's Bekias, it's Daf after all, but he's fun. So he attracted a lot of people. He made a weekend, they finished a Masechta, he made a big weekend, 800 people showed up. It's hard to even imagine a Daf shir with 800 people in it. It's a lot. Some of them are very wealthy. One of them offered 2,000 shekel to any chayal who learn a Masechta. He's given out 250,000 shekels. This isn't just Ben Adam L'Makom. This is also Ben Adam L'Chavero to close the gap between different segments of the population. Okay, so that's one approach that works. That's where some people are at. There are other people and it's from the other end, that there are people who in the Haredi community who are living in their little ghettos, and there's nothing wrong with living in a protected ghetto at all. And they don't even know that anything is happening outside. So becoming more aware and helping in whatever way you can. I'll just give you one example. Somebody here in Harnof, okay, Gittel Normile, okay, her real name. So she arranges for whoever wants to bake challah rolls for the Chayalim. None of the people who bake have sons in the army or husbands in the army, but they make challahs. The seminary girls also, and she arranged with someone to bring it up. They like little challahs so they could fit into bags, 2 challahs in a bag, and it's not only the dati chayalim who want lechem mishnah. Anybody wants freshly baked challah. So it's an act of closing the gaps in society from this way and from that way. In learning when things don't go one's own way, learning not to blame the establishment, the parents, the teachers, the seminaries, all of this has been Adam L'Chavero. So that's on our side to them. And then they have on their side to us. I think did you see the clip with Rav Steinman and the person from the yeshiva? So I don't even know how to find this clip anymore. There was a clip where a parent, I'm not sure now if it was a parent or somebody representing a young boy who wasn't accepted into the yeshiva he wanted to go to. He went to Rav Steinman and asked his eitzah. So Rav Steinman called up somebody from the yeshiva, and the man says to him, Rav Steinman said, I heard the boy, he's very good. You could accept him in the yeshiva. And the man said he didn't give in. Like I think most people is hearing Rav Steinman on the other end, oh God, now what? Okay, but he said, yeah, the problem is not with the boy, it's his family. They're very they're not us, they're not what we want. Rav Steinman said, you're a Balgaiva. So the man who was there talking about the boy on his behalf said, Rav Steinman, this is a very chesed person. So he said, you're right, he's a big Balgaiva. Okay, so this was filmed. So I don't know how, now that I'm talking about it, I don't know how appropriate it was to film it and put it on Yeshiva News, but whether you're on this side, on the people who want, or that side, the people who have to manage, whether you're coming from this segment or that segment, the need for liking people, not just being pleasant, just actually liking people, is it's not always so easy. But everybody is living in their own world and has their own nisyanos. There's nobody without a Navi, which by the way, the Geulah says the fact that we don't have Nevi'im is the hardest part of our Golos. We don't have Nevi'im, so nobody could say it's this or it's that. Okay, and it's unfortunate that people who everyone has different mitzvahs that resonate because we all have different soul roots. So you'll have people who who Tznius resonates, so they'll say it's all about Tznius, who Shabbos resonates, so they'll say it's all about Shabbos. So, I'm talking to me, human relations resonates, I'm saying it's all about Avos Yisrael. I'm not so sure that anybody knows. Okay, let's go a little bit further here. Okay.
Thank you.
So after he says, don't try to figure things out too much because everything depends on the Madrega and the nature of the times. Okay. So the next stage after this is that the Goyim will do tshuva and they'll serve Hashem together with us, Shechem Echad, shoulder to shoulder. So there's another stage. Next, okay, Yityachasu al piv b'ruach hakodesh, shetanuach, the people will relate to Mashiach. This is Mashiach ben David as their leader, and his ruach hakodesh will guide them in the direction that they take in their lives. Okay, then it goes on. Ve'enam yaches Yisrael el l'shifteihem, and he'll tell us which shevet we belong to. Now, what difference does it make what shevet you belong to? So there are two things. One is that the land will be split up according to shevet, but not like it was before. It'll be like even slices for each one for each shevet, with the central part being for the Beis Hamikdash in a very large area. So anybody who paid $500,000 for a house in the Rova, too bad, it's going to go to the Kohanim, you're going to go out. They'll probably give you your money back. But in any case, only Kohanim will be living in the old city, and the old city then will be very much bigger than it is. I was looking at 500 is what it is now. Then it's going to be 4,000. I would say it would cover most of, if you're going south, probably till Kiryat Moshe, east till close to Yam HaMelech, north to maybe Sanhedria, and west probably through the whole expanse of Rachov Yafa, only Kohanim. Okay, in any case, leaving so, and the other people will be doing their own shevet and doing whatever their shevet's talent is. Okay, now here's the final stage. This is the last word on it. You ready? We're going to finish. We have 10 minutes, okay? Lo nitavu hachachamim v'neviim yemot haMashiach lo kedei shishtalhu k'tu'al olam. The Nevi'im and Chachamim didn't want these days to have an order that we control the world. Not that we dominate the nations. Not that we should be elevated by the nations and from a place of enlightened rule bring them all close to God. Not to eat, drink, and be merry. And so everyone could be learning Torah and living Torah with no opposition. Today, and everybody will be worthy of Olam Haba. They'll want the Dveikus and they'll have the Dveikus. But so now, that's the final stage. So we had Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David.
Quick question. Does
Yeah.
that mean that everybody who today isn't able to learn for whatever reason, for learning disabilities, they won't have that?
Yes,
That everybody will be able to learn?
right, at this stage, yes. Again, remember, there's an intermediate stage before this stage, but at this final stage, yes. In fact, it's a pasuk. It says, then no one will have to teach his friend. Everybody will know Hashem. So as you know, there's a special needs school called Limudei Hashem. So that's a reference to the pasuk that says, then when Mashiach comes, kol b'nayach Limudei Hashem. There'll be no exceptions. Okay.
At that point, there's no Bechira left?
We didn't say that. We said everybody will know. So Bechira at this point, we're getting to the very end. I don't think we'll have to talk about this more next time, at least so much, because we have to talk about Techias HaMesim, which is a big topic. But Bechira is continual. Bechira is always dynamic. So I want to explain this to you. There are things you would never do. Is that true? Even if your downstairs neighbor, goes into the elevator with her drippy bag of garbage habitually, and you told her she has to get the kind that's better, and she keeps on buying these like really thin ones, and the elevator smells. You're not gonna kill her, right? It's like not even gonna occur to you to kill her. She's safe. Okay, so it's not within your choice level, right? It's not there. Okay, you're also not thinking of, let me just think, letting, let's say, the institution for people with severe mental disabilities know that you're going to be there once a week with people who play music to entertain the people who are so broken by life. Were you planning on doing it this week? No, that's also outside of your choice level for good. So nobody could make all the choices. When you're saying Bechira is relative, it's never absolute. There's no one who can make all the choices. What life is about is moving your choices from a lower place to a higher place. Okay, so let's say you have somebody, let me just think of somebody who's a really good person. You have somebody like Rav Yitzchak David Grossman, who would be totally incapable of not listening to somebody who's suffering. Whether he could do something about it or not, he couldn't just like, leave me alone, it's your problem, not my problem. Those words would not come out of his mouth. But I'm sure when he was 8 years old, it could have, because that's how 8-year-olds are. So what life is about is moving from where you are right now to a higher place. But you still have choices, because above the higher place, there's always room that's higher. So when Mashiach comes, the really bad choices that we still make will be so unattractive that we won't make them. So I may have told you this. Did I tell you about the men's aseifa for Shmirat HaLashon? So you know how like in the 9 days, there's always these big aseifot for women in Binyanei Ummah for Shmirat HaLashon? And they're always quite full, like hundreds and hundreds of women come. So one year, somebody thought we should do one for men. Okay? So men and women are different. Women will just come to hear more and to be together and to hear good speakers. So for men, they're not going to come to hear good speakers. They have to have the Gedolei Dor there. So they got the Gedolei Dor. The organizers got the Gedolei Dor to agree to come, like the big Rebbes and the big Rosh Yeshiva. So they were all there to promote Shmiras HaLashon. So there were no women there, but I got someone to tape some of it. So one of the speakers was Rav Nosson Tzvi. As soon as I heard the beginning of his speech, I know this isn't going to work. He's standing there, he says, and why would a person want to say something demeaning about another Jew? How could you ever want to? Where's the taiva coming from? It doesn't give you physical pleasure. It doesn't give you money. Where's it coming? And I'm saying, he doesn't relate to the rest of us. It may not give you pleasure, but it gives the rest of us pleasure. Okay, and that was the last aseifa for Men Shvuat HaLashon. So so we have a while to move up, but there's always bechira. Okay, at the end, the bechira isn't between bad and good. It's between different levels of good. And there's no top because Hashem is infinite. Okay, fair. So that's it for now. We didn't quite finish. We'll finish next time. Zehu.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
So,
Freilich and
Freilich
Chanukah.
Chanukah.